Okay, we are now streaming. Shannon, you can put us on the record, please.
What?
All right, this is in the matter of the Lewis Bradshaw I thought there was one other last name involved.
Eubanks.
Eubanks, thank you. Shannon, can you see everyone who's here? Do I need to go through that on the record?
No, I can. I mean, I can see who's here unless you know.
Okay, no, I think, so there is an issue that we need to deal with on the record regarding Kylian and his visits with his father. Ms. Tucker, can you bring us up to speed on that?
Yes, Your Honor. At the last hearing, I think the request for supervised parenting time between Kai and Samuel take place, or perhaps the other way around. But the court had asked that the therapist of Kai weigh in to give their recommendations on that. We did receive a report from the therapist, which I passed along to everyone this afternoon. I just received it this afternoon. His report doesn't specifically address parenting time, unfortunately, but the worker has had conversations with that provider. And it's my understanding that his recommendation is for parenting time to remain suspended at this time. Ms. Widener may have more information than that.
Ms. Widener, can you elaborate? You've actually spoken to the therapist?
Have Steve Hampton is Kylan's therapist, and he's actually observed 2 visits. The last visit that he observed was last Wednesday, and we did talk about what the recommendation should be for Kylan, and he agreed that visits should be suspended at this time because of the concerns that we're having with his behaviors.
So I've got a better understanding of the background from the off-the-record conversation we had. Kai has spent the majority of his life with the current placement. Is that right?
Yes, Your Honor.
He is well bonded to them and they're well bonded to him. So he sees that as home. He sees them as his parent figures. And is that generally accurate?
That is correct.
And as we might expect from a child who was taken out of such a setting, regardless of whether he should have been there in the first place, we can anticipate that separation from those longtime caregivers would be traumatic for him.
It's a fair statement.
So irrespective of whether Mr. Bradshaw is a fully appropriate and suitable person to visit this child, the practical reality we're facing is that when the child sees Mr. Bradshaw, it renews his fears of being taken from his caregivers, regardless of who it's with, and being placed with somebody else. And that could very well be explaining why he's having regressions, I guess is the best way to describe it, when he returns to his caregivers from this visit. Do I have a fair picture of this?
I don't think that's accurate, Your Honor. The content of the letter from the therapist, Mr. Hampton, observed 2 visits are essentially that Kai's out of control. And the visit, it's not aggressing. I'll read, if you have a moment, and I'd be happy to take testimony from Mr. Bradshaw, but we're just pointing out the negative things here. But the children in these, 5 of them, Kai's the one who's having the difficulties. The visitation notes from just last month indicating Kai throwing food around. He gets corrected by his dad and he starts screaming and crying, and that upsets August. He gets down from the couch and Kai starts hitting his sister. His dad puts him in timeout, puts him on his lap. He's screaming and yelling at him, wanting to get out. And his dad's trying to, discipline him and holding him in a timeout. And Kai's reacting. Then once he gets out of that timeout, Your Honor, he grabs a juice off the table and dumps it on the floor. Dad corrects him again, tries to talk to this kid. And he doesn't want to hear it. He has no respect for him. He sees him just as another person, and he's reacting. It sounds like, I don't know the level of structure within his home, but this kid is having difficulties at placement listening to dad. Another example, he's jumping up and down on the couch. Dad says, you got to stop. August isn't doing these things. Samari isn't doing these things. Jayana isn't doing these things. Cassidy isn't doing these things. It's Kai, and we can't go to the leap and say it's because he's seeing dad. I mean, I can go to that same leap and say, hey, he's been with this placement for 3 years, and he's coming into these parenting time sessions and essentially doing what he's saying swear words that a 3-year-old should never say. He didn't learn that from his dad, who he was only with for 2 months. These cuss words that he's saying, his behaviors, he pulled his pants down in one visit and started peeing on the floor because he said that's what he's going to do. He isn't peeing in his pants, cowering in the corner, running from dad. You're not getting any of that. He's just essentially an out of control kid. And when dad tries to rope him in, he's very limited at what he can and can't do. And again, Your Honor, we have asked for help with these visits from day one, and we haven't gotten it. We haven't had anybody sit in on him in these visits when Kai gets out of control and say, why don't you try this? We have the worker on the other side of a mirror who Kai is now programmed to say, there's my out. And the way he acts, he essentially gets rewarded in some way, shape, or form by this worker, by her doing what she's doing to calm him down or to mitigate what's going on, instead of directing dad, why don't you try these techniques? Maybe that's not her job. But again, we've asked for assistance for this child. And the other part of it is, Your Honor, they're leaving out the parts where, Kai plays with his dad. Kai sits on his dad's lap and looks at videos on his phone. Kai hugs his dad. They leave all those parts out. None of those are included. They don't tell you about the other 3 children that run to him and give him hugs and say they miss him at the beginning of parenting time and kiss him and say they love him at the end of parenting time. All that stuff is left out. And we're focusing on the negative in this child's behaviors, and we're blaming dad for it. That's completely unfair. And moreover, it's not in his parenting time. What makes more sense is to get someone in there to help him redirect Kai's behaviors, or for dad to be involved with Mr. Hampton if he's willing to do so, which we've said months ago he's willing to do, to get involved with therapy to address their relationship and that behavior. But none of that's being done. Instead, we have a kid he's a 3-year-old, he's difficult, and dad's not given the tools or the assistance he needs to help with this child. Instead, we're going to blame dad for what's happening. It's unfair. And again, if the court is willing to, I would like to take testimony from my client who can tell you how these visits are going with his kids, because he's not getting any direction from the worker there. And he has an entirely different view on how his interaction is with Kai and as well as the other 4 children. I think that's significant for you to know this drastic step.
So let me take what you've offered as an offer of proof. I didn't get the sense that anybody was blaming dad for Kai's behavior. The sense I got was they were blaming the visits. for Kai's behavior, that something about these visits is causing this child to act out. Not necessarily anything Mr. Bradshaw is doing or not doing, but if the visits are as bad as you've just said, where the child literally drops his pants and urinates on the floor, that's pretty extreme behavior. I kind of like your idea of, well, he's seeing a therapist now. He clearly needs to be seeing a therapist. If he's behaving like that in a structured setting like this, and is beyond control, a therapeutic setting for Mr. Bradshaw to be involved in, with the therapist's input as to how that should be, sounds to me like it might be a good idea. I mean, the fact that he behaves well for part of the visit doesn't, unfortunately, help us at all with the part of the visit where he's out of control.
That's where I would like that direction to assist him, because cutting off visits with the possibility, however slight, however great it would be, that termination doesn't happen, considering we're going to get there to that hearing in a short period of time, I think stopping the visit starting to begin is going to be more damaging. The suggestion of working with Mr. Hampton, if he's willing to do it, I know my client would be willing to do it, would seem to make most sense in the interim. And I would hope that Kai doesn't take it, he's not at these visits with his other siblings, that's reflecting on him. I would hope that wouldn't be the case, but if this is the direction we need to go, I think Mr. Bradshaw would be willing to do that.
So Ms. Widener, when these visits at which Kai has acted out occur, there are other siblings present?
That is correct. However, these behaviors also occur when it's just him in August as well. The other question on my mind is that the agency uses these as an opportunity to make sure sibling visits occur. So there's a dual purpose. It can't be beneficial to the other children to be at a visit where Kai is acting out in the manner described. That's going to be disruptive to everybody and everything. How is August impacted when Kai acts out in the way described or ways described at a visit? Are you the one who actually observes the visits, Ms. Widener? Yes, I am. And also our agency's visit coordinator does them as well, but I have mostly done visits myself. At first, August was fine. She wasn't showing any of these behaviors. I have noticed recently that when Kylan is acting out during visits, she does tend to follow his behaviors. I would like to address that. I have addressed these concerns with Dad in talking about redirection and given him suggestions on how to, if the children are acting out, instead of putting them in timeout, why don't we pick the toys up and put them away? Why don't we engage in a different activity with all of the siblings rather than just focusing on one child and not the other?
Is he resistant? Is he resistant to your suggestions?
I wouldn't say he's resistant. However, I have not seen any consistent progress.
Your Honor, her notes reflect that he's actually done that. But when you have one child who's the focus, so to speak, if he focuses on the other children, then, and I've seen in the notes, he's not paying attention to Kai. It's kind of a damned if he does, damned if he doesn't situation. So what you're suggesting if you need, I'm pretty sure that Brianna can work out something if she needs to, so Kai can see his siblings. But if your suggestion is that we take Kai out of these visits and put it in a therapeutic setting for dad to still have those, but he can continue visits with the other kids and see how those go, that would probably make the most sense. Because direction he's telling me he's getting is very minimal. Instead, he's being told control over Kai. Well, 3-year-old, you can't exactly reason with a 3-year-old.
So are August and Kai in different placements?
No.
So they don't need sibling visits. They're together all the time. It would certainly make sense to me that however you're going to arrange for Kai to maintain contact with his other siblings, that visits between Kai and his father shouldn't be with the other children there. And if it can be done in a therapeutic setting with Mr. Hampton present, that would be even better. But scheduling a parenting time around a therapist's schedule when the therapist is going to need one-on-one time with this child, I'm not sure that's going to get Mr. Bradshaw very much parenting time.
Maybe Mr. Hampton can work it where part of the session he has for, I don't know what you can do with a 3-year-old besides play therapy. Maybe he can use part of the session he has with Kai to have session with Kai and dad. That way they could keep the appointment and he still have that exposure and work on things that need to be worked on. This is, Your Honor, I think this is more of a parenting issue.
Based on what we discussed off the record, we're going to bring this back for another pretrial in a week because some proposals have been made that everybody needs an opportunity to mull over about, at least for some of the children, resolving by entry of custody orders and then figuring out where we go from there. And I want everyone to have the full opportunity to mull that over. Particularly in light of some comments that I made off the record. So between now and next week, we will have a distinct opportunity for Mr. Hampton, if he can, I don't know when these schedules are, to have dad attend the session with just Kai. And then we'll have some opportunity for feedback from Mr. Hampton. And again, I don't know what his schedule is going to be like. Does somebody know when the next session is scheduled?
For his therapy appointments or his visits with dad?
His therapy.
I believe that they are on Thursdays. Linda could probably confirm that. However, these sessions are occurring over Zoom virtually.
Oh.
Uh,
Is he willing to do in person? Because I know a lot of therapists prefer in person.
I can talk to him about it. I do know that he was pretty persistent on just doing virtual visits right now. I can give him a phone call after this hearing.
all right. And I want, if he's able to accommodate that, let's do that. And then a week from today, you can report to me how that went, and I'll be able to hear from Mr. Bradshaw as well. If he's not able to accommodate that, I don't want to suspend Mr. Bradshaw's visit with Kai, but I want it to be just him and Kai. I don't want the other siblings there because that's just going to be disruptive to them. And that gives Mr. Bradshaw the opportunity for one-on-one. Let's see how that goes in the event that Mr. Hampton's not available to do an in-person visit himself. So let's come back a week from today. Let's set it at 8:30 with the other pretrial, Shannon.
June 15th.
June 15th. And then what we will do, hopefully, is be able to identify a trial date then that everybody can count on so that we can move forward.
Thank you,
I would
Judge.
like to recommend, environment is everything. We have good weather. Rather than in a cramped room, if possible, what about a playground with a swing set or something like that, rather than a sterile room with a mirror? I think that's more conducive to a child and a good time.
Ms. Widener, is that something you could accommodate?
Yes, I can.
All right, well, let's do that. And we will, we'll see you all back here next Tuesday at 8:30 and hopefully be able to narrow some issues, if nothing else. And we'll have a little more information to go on to decide what's the best course for this case moving forward. But certainly the suggestion that at least for some of the children, we could resolve with a custody order, I'm very open to.
Hey, Judge, thank you for your time.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you all. Have a good day, everyone.
All right, thank you.